But the U.S. has also used these tactics. Operation Northwoods is another big example of not as far as we know, they didn't do any of them, but as part of this plan to get rid of Castro, Kennedy basically asked the Joint Chiefs, can we get a list of different options, different things that we could do to try to get rid of Castro. And on that list is, impersonating the Cuban Air Force and shooting down American airplanes, commercial airliners, impersonating the Cuban Navy and attacking American shipping, starting a terrorist group in Miami and attacking civilians in Miami while pretending to be the Cuban, intelligence agency. They didn't go through with these in that case, as far as we know, but the U.S. definitely, these are just like false flag kind of tactics are, as far as a lot of military leaders and intelligence leaders are concerned, completely legitimate and effective tactic to use in certain circumstances.
Yeah, and like to be clear, as part of Northwoods, they actually planned on shooting out of the water Cuban refugee ships, of blowing up planes, and of course later Cuban exiles who were working for America. Whether I don't know who exactly ordered this, but they blew up Cuban airliners. I think with like a teenage fencing team on board. And so like these kind of attacks against civilians, and in Northwoods too, they're planning attacks against American civilians. These aren't like things that they really like that took a lot of moral consideration to go through, right? Like, I mean, if you can read the Operation Northwood sort of proposal that the Joint Chiefs of Staff wrote up, and I mean, it's blatant. It's out there in the open. It's not, there's absolutely no moral consideration taken. They discuss it like political maneuvers or military maneuvers without really regard for cost of life.
Yeah, it's completely strategic. I mean, I think that's like the key point is that they view these as like peer points of strategy, just like any other kind of military or political strategy, right? And like, so the only way to think of them aren't as like you said, like the moral considerations or whatever. They aren't even thought of as, at least, from the perspective of Joint Chiefs or, different generals masterminding these things. Like, they're not even thought of as even like events. They're just like points on a map of trying to get from A to B in order to get C to happen so they can do, X, Y, and Z.
Well, I guess one thing about this is, like back in the 70s, there was a document similar to Northwoods that was supposedly a sort of like an annex to some Army field manual that described very similar tactics to Northwoods. Yeah, I don't remember what it was called off the top of my head, but and it was basically the same kind of thing. Under certain circumstances, you can pretend to be a left-wing group and bomb something, etc. And at the time, people said that was a KGB forgery, that they made that up to make the Americans look bad. First off, there are people who, like Ray Klein, deputy director of the CIA, said that the document didn't look out of the ordinary to him. He said he hadn't seen that one in particular, but that based on what he knew of the kinds of tactics that they would use, it didn't look out of the ordinary to him. And then Licio Gelli, who was part of this Italian Gladio, said that the CIA had given him the document himself. So it clearly was something that they were working on, all the way back in the 50s and 60s. I mean, it's a very accepted military tactic.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the KGB would have to forge that seems sort of absurd to me, because that is basically the game plan and one of the major tactics that they used for the next many decades, not just in Europe, not just in South America, but everywhere around the globe.
Well, the favorite tactic of the U.S. is to just anything embarrassing about the U.S. politically or in the government, they would just blame on the Soviets.
Yeah.
That was the playbook.